and welcome to Daily Debrief from People's Dispatch. I'm Pragya and today we bring you an update on the Russia-Ukraine story with Gazprom cutting off supplies to Poland and Bulgaria. Then we talk about Steven Donziger, the lawyer who took on Chevron, and Turkey-Saudi ties which seem to be thawing a little more. In our first story, Russian natural gas supplier Gazprom has stopped supplying to Bulgaria and Poland. The company gave absence of payments in rubles as the reason. Russia has made it clear earlier that certain unfriendly countries would have to pay for gas supplies in rubles. The development raises the question if European countries, despite their bluster, will be able to avoid Russian energy supplies. Prabir Purkasta has more details on this issue. Prabir, first of all, we know that some countries seem to have agreed to pay in rubles, so why did these two not do that?
Well, here is the issue. The paying in rubles is also not a straightforward deal. What the Russians have said, we have the Gazprom, it also is a bank, so you pay your dollars over there, Gazprom will convert the dollars into rubles, and that is how we will get paid in rubles. So the transaction has two parts to it. Okay. So if you look at it, the European Union initially said paying in rubles will be violating sanctions. Now they have said this is okay because we are after all paying only dollars into a Gazprom account and the conversion is being done not by us. Therefore, we are not really paying in rubles, we are paying in dollars, so we are okay. Effectively, it of course means it's only a subterfuge. What they're doing is, of course, agreeing to what Russia has said, that the way the transfer will take place has been what the Russians or Putin has said, and that's how they will also do it. So technically, they will say we are not paying in rubles, but they actually are. The second part of it is that if they don't, then they're in deep trouble, and everybody agrees that the European Union is going to be in deep trouble. Bulgaria and Poland are small players in this. Poland has been preparing for quite some time to switch from Russian gas into other sources. Bulgaria can take gas from others. There are also the Turk stream which comes to Turkey, they can take gas from there. So they are really bit players in this business, and more of it is showing their anti-Russian credentials more than anything else. The question that remains is what you asked. Is it possible for European Union, and that really means the big players? It means Germany, it means France, it means Italy. Can they avoid paying in rubles in the convoluted way they are now doing? That not paying straightforwardly in rubles, but doing it in this way. So I think the case is very clear that they are going to pay this way. ENI, in fact, the Italians have also opened a ruble, essentially a Gazprom bank account, which is where the conversion will take place to rubles, and so others will also follow suit. So as of now, from what we understand, about 10 such channels have been opened, 10 such accounts have been opened, and therefore the big European players have fallen in line to what Russia is saying, while claiming they're not really paying in rubles. That is one.
Yeah.
The second and the more important issue is what Ursula von der Leyen is raising, the European Commission head, that this is a violation of sanctions, this is a violation of the contract, and this is where, Russia is trying to blackmail us. The point is, European Union has seized Russian foreign exchange reserves, which was with European Union. If Russia gets payment in euros and it remains in European Union, they can seize it again. So effectively what they're asking, if you take Ursula von der Leyen's position, is that we'll pay you in euros and keep the money with us, and then we will decide whether we can seize the money, we'll give it to somebody else, or we'll actually give it to you. Now that is something which Russia has said, after what you've already done, freezing our reserves which with your banks, we will not accept that you keep our euros in your accounts. We will keep it in Russia. So effectively, if you want to buy my goods, you pay me, I will hold the money and not you. And I think that's the crux of the battle that's going around.
So is Russia also trying to send a message over here?
Clearly, and it has sent the message loud and clear quite some time back when it said that we will accept money in only rubles, and this is the consequence of your sanctions, that you have seized illegally my money. And in fact, this is really the big issue which hasn't got the focus it demands, because if a country can seize the foreign exchange reserves it has of another country, this is a violation of all mercantile law. If that's how trade takes place. It assumes that you are doing trade in good faith. You're not going to take my goods and then keep the money with you, and when I want it for something else, you will say, no, now I've seized the money. So this is really something which would be in bad faith. The United States has done this much earlier to Iran, then with Libya. Of course, it also seized Iraq's money, but that, of course, after occupying it. Venezuela's gold reserves are seized, for instance, by the United Kingdom. It's still under litigation. But all those examples, the countries were relatively smaller. This time, Russia is not a small country. It also supplies a huge number of primary materials, commodities which the world requires. So doing it to Russia, which is, as I said, not a minor player, I think is a huge issue. And the fact that Russia can hit back is because it has got the strength that it is relatively self-sufficient both in preparatory armaments, it manufactures its own arms, and also in primary commodities like food, energy, and so on. So it's not an easy country to sanction, as they have discovered now. And unfortunately for them, at least Europe is deeply dependent on Russian energy supplies, not only for gas, but also for oil and coal. So putting all of it together, I think they have now reached a point where the end of this kind of sanctions could also be in the offing, and perhaps the dominance of dollar and the euro in international finance will also weaken as a consequence of actually seizing Russian reserves. Which country then would like to leave reserves in any other currency? That is a big central question. And what happens to if dollar is no longer the reserve currency, with euro following behind the dollar, which is what it seemed to have been doing? If these two currencies are not reliable currencies for the world, what do we do? And I think that's a big question that has come up, and which we really have at the moment no clear answers.
All right, Prabir, thanks very much for that update. We go to the United States now. On Wednesday, 10 members of the House of Representatives asked President Joe Biden to pardon activist and lawyer Steven Donziger. Donziger recently stepped outside his New York City apartment after nearly 1,000 days of house arrest. Donziger had earlier won a landmark lawsuit against the oil giant Chevron in Ecuador. His suit got indigenous people $9.5 billion in damages from Chevron and forced it to leave Ecuador. However, Chevron launched a legal battle against him in the United States, leading to his arrest in 2019. Anish from People's Dispatch will tell us more about this. Anish, could you tell us why this talk about pardon is happening now?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? Because he has pretty much served the entire sentence that he was put through. But from the perspective of the lawmakers here, they're looking at a systemic abuse being done, and because of which a judicial precedent can be set for the future. We have to remember that the entire case of criminal contempt under which Donziger was charged came after a failed attempt to charge him for bribery in the Ecuador case, where Chevron was asked to pay $9.5 billion. In this entire process, we had at least one instance of, in fact, the earlier bribery case was based on an instance of falsified testimony. The testifier himself later admitted that he falsified in the case because he completely misled the court about the nature of his relationship, not only with Donziger but also with the entire case to begin with in Ecuador. And moreover, if you look at the manner in which the prosecution was conducted during this criminal contempt case that the court had put against Donziger, you actually look at how problematic it is. Firstly, you had an instance of a private prosecutor being taken in because all public prosecutors, federal public prosecutors, refused to do it, and because of which a private prosecutor was hired by the court. And this prosecution company we're looking at worked closely with Chevron earlier. So we're already looking at a very compromised position to begin with, and the contempt was a contempt on another contempt case. Right. So he was earlier put under contempt for refusing to pay the fine that he was supposed to pay Chevron. And then the contempt case that followed that was because he refused to give up his digital records in his personal laptop, phones and everything to Chevron apparently for cross-checking the evidence. But he argued that there is a very essential and fundamental client-lawyer relationship that would be violated in that. And he had actually filed an appeal against that order. But even before the appeal process had gone through, the court just went ahead with a criminal contempt case, because of which he was charged and then convicted. So the entire process was essentially to put him in confinement, to make an example out of it. And this is something that was pointed out by several people before. It was not just these 10 lawmakers, but you had a UN working group on arbitrary detention talking about how the entire process is compromised and violated international law. We have to also remember the kind of litigation that Chevron had conducted against Donziger. It was pretty much a campaign against him. Whenever he attempted, whenever he tried to get Chevron to pay up the $9.5 billion in damages, they actually put a transnational campaign against him. That actually, according to some estimates, cost close to $1 billion. So it is not even like they cannot pay the $9.5 billion. They just chose not to pay it. So you have an entire case where he was legally hounded, judicially hounded, and the entire judicial process was compromised. And this is something that the lawmakers want Biden to correct by sending a message that corporate pollution and corporate corruption is not acceptable, and that what Steven Donziger did was not wrong.
You know, what had the company Chevron done in Ecuador which led to this case?
Yeah, so the entire case, if you look at it, it began, it depends on the kind of pollution that they conducted since the 1960s to 1990s. Now, this was not Chevron per se. It was an earlier company called Texaco, which was the primary, mining company in Ecuador, a major mining company that Chevron had later acquired. So Texaco had dumped is accused of dumping close to 16 billion gallons, which is close to about 60 billion liters of toxic waste on several villages, including water resources, underground water, on land, on open mining pits. All of that, completely devastating the environment there, but also causing massive displacement of thousands of people. And you have to remember that there were also other sorts of violent crimes that these companies were, accused of, to the point we have to remember many of them hired paramilitaries or, right-wing militias to conduct campaigns against any kind of indigenous protesters or any kind of illegal encroachments they had to do during the mining process. So, and this even led to, according to some estimates, an extinction of an entire tribal community in Ecuador. So this is a sort of what at some level many indigenous activists have pointed out is also a cultural genocide that happened, because many of them were completely displaced from their homes. They were completely cut off by their roots, their culture, and everything that made them what they were. And so this is this entire process of not only polluting but also displacing and uprooting communities was something that Texaco and later Chevron was charged with. And this, in that context, this 9.6 billion is not really damages; it's reparations for the crimes that they have committed against this community. And it was upheld by the Ecuadorian Supreme Court. It was obviously sanctioned first in 2011. The earlier damages that the lower court had sanctioned was about $18 billion, which was later amended. Even though the court had upheld, it amended the damages to $9.5 billion. And this goes to about close to 30,000 indigenous residents in the Amazons in Ecuador. So this something that Chevron refused to pay. Obviously, it exited the country, but it also went against Donziger and also went against any attempts to get themselves to pay these damages. And so this is the more important case. Obviously, Donziger's case is important considering the fact that it sends a chilling effect to any environmental activist or anybody who works as a lawyer in the professional capacity, that if you're going against corporate corruption or corporate pollution, you're going to be facing any kind of legal or judicial hounding. So, but at the same time, this is a bigger story as well, that there are thousands of Ecuadorians still waiting for the damages that they are entitled to by their courts.
Right, Anish, thank you very much for that update now. We move to Turkey, where President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's government continues a thaw with Saudi Arabia. Erdogan is visiting Saudi on Thursday after a cold 3-year relationship. Their relations soured after Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was killed at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. Turkey is set for an election soon and also faces a difficult economic crisis. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has put in place an unofficial boycott of Turkish goods. Turkey has also transferred its own legal case to Saudi Arabia on Khashoggi's trial. Abdul from People's Dispatch has more for us on this. Abdul, Turkey had taken a very strong stance against Saudi after the killing of the journalist Khashoggi. Now, what explains this sudden desire to have better ties?
Well, the elections are coming in Turkey next year, and if you're following the condition of Turkey's economy, you will realize that any president who wants to kind of retain his power or want to win the elections will have to do something radical. So what is happening between Saudi Arabia and Turkey is basically has something to do with the economic problems in Turkey and the elections coming next year. Today, Turkey's inflation rates are more than 30-35%, and the central bank is saying it will go up to close to 50% by next year or so. Then we all know that because of the COVID, economies across the world had suffered, Turkey included. Then Turkey also faced last year floods and the wildfire, which basically hampered a crop in many part of the country. So all these together with the mismanagement, the kind of policies which Erdogan government has followed has led to the collapse of the economy. And Saudi Arabia, being the economic superpower in the region, is seen as a potential kind of investor which can help in some ways to kind of recover Turkish economy. The relationship between both the countries were not good, as you rightly mentioned, particularly after the killing of Khashoggi in 2018. Turkey has basically created a situation where Saudi Arabia basically officially took certain steps, which led to the fall of their mutual trade from once more than $3 billion. It has come down to less than $200 million per year, particularly exports, where I'm talking about the Turkish export to Saudi Arabia. And therefore, Turkey wants to kind of revive it, to kind of bring it back to where it was, so that there can some kind of normalcy is restored. And that normalcy may boost the economy in Turkey. That is what the thinking is. Yeah.
So, Abdul, but will this outreach to Saudi, to the Gulf country, actually help Turkey now in terms of the economy?
That is the hope, at least. But the Saudi press, if you're following Saudi press, you will see that they're saying that there may be some kind of economic rapprochement, but it may not lead to the political restoration of relations as it was before. I think this visit may be the beginning of it, but there are various other problems which shape Saudi and Turkey's problem. One is, of course, the ideological differences between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Turkey being a kind of pro-Islamicist, pro-Muslim Brotherhood political party ruling, which basically supported different kinds of, that's what the image the Gulf countries have, that it supported the Arab Spring movements in different parts of the West Asia, which basically, quote unquote, destabilized their governments. So they see Turkey as a potential threat to their political stability, particularly. That ideological difference is there. Even for this meeting, there were several rounds of postponements. Turkey wanted to restore the relationship last year itself, but Saudi Arabia was not very willing to do it. And 3 times the proposed visit to Saudi Arabia were postponed because, of course, because of the, you can say, regional rivalries, because of the Khashoggi issue, and so on and so forth. Finally, when the Khashoggi murder trials were suspended and transferred to Saudi Arabia, then only this visit was, you can say, was allowed to go ahead. So given those complications, still Turkey retains an ambition to be a regional player. Its support to Muslim Brotherhood or Islamicists across the region has not subsided. So until those political issues are kind of addressed in some way or another, it may not lead to complete restoration of the relationship at this moment. But what Turkey sees, at least, that this is a beginning which may help them in some way. Yeah.
Right, Abdul. Thank you very much for joining us. And that is all we have today. Thank you for watching Daily Debrief. Do come back to us tomorrow, and please follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And for more stories and updates from around the world, read www.peoplesdispatch.org.